So we are live. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Woke Wednesdays. We do this every single Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm really excited about tonight's show. The discussion already started before the camera went on.
It's real out here.
Yeah, so my name is Hurston Sanchez. I am a second-year doctoral student here at Florida International University. My focus is around education and race. And we have two amazing, prominent attorneys who live here in Miami. So would you like to introduce yourselves?
Dwayne Crooks from Crooks Law Group. We've been practicing law for 15, 16 years, and we're conveniently located in Plantation, Florida. I practice mostly civil litigation, including ADA work, as well as criminal defense.
Right here is Sean Lamar Marquise Hairston. Hairston Law, PA, coming out of Coral Gables. I do criminal litigation as well as civil litigation. I also do some ADA defense. I do fraud and a few other things as well. So definitely do a lot of things and able to hopefully help you out some. I'm also a member of Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and also graduate University of Miami School of Law. So shout out to the U.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Oh, you went to U too? Okay.
Undergrad at the U,
Okay.
definitely.
Man, so I'm really excited. Tonight we're talking about a controversial topic, and I know we have different opinions, whether it's with the audience members or with the panelists. And tonight we're talking about these racist, I'll put it in quotations because not everyone thinks they are, commercials that have been just coming out. So Pepsi, Dove, H&M, can we think of others? Recent ones.
There was a Chinese one also that's kind of like the Dove commercial where the Chinese guy kind of went in and they did a washing thing and he came out. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
He went in black and then washed him and he came out Chinese. Similar to the Dove commercial.
Yeah. So we want to get from the panelists and from the audience members, what were your initial reactions when you heard about any of these commercials, whether it was H&M, Dove, the Chinese commercial, Pepsi, you know that racism can be solved with the Pepsi can.
Helps.
So what were your initial reactions to these commercials? And I would love to just kind of, whoever would like to go first.
I will start. Are you want to
Go
start?
ahead, sir.
Let me tell you what my initial reaction.
And feel free to drop in the comments what you think. If you disagree with them or have questions, drop it in there, and I will more than happy be reading it out.
Please disagree with me. I love it. So first of all, when I first saw the Dove,
First of all,
it's always first of all. When I first saw the Dove commercial, that commercial in particular bothered me. It did. When I saw the clips of it rotating on Instagram or Facebook or wherever it was, I didn't actually see the actual commercial because I didn't have cable TV. I use Netflix. You know how that goes. So I saw it. And I didn't really see I saw it and I thought it was really improper. Like you were turning a black woman into a white woman, which is obviously bad. But then so I decided to do what I should always do. We should see something online is actually check it out and see actually what's really going on. And I saw the full commercial. To be honest, I understood why it's very racially insensitive. Did I think it was racist off rip? No. My thoughts, personally.
Okay, so I think any commercial that turns someone black to someone white after using a product to wash your skin in any form, soap, detergent, bleach, is inherently racist off rip.
It's not what it was doing.
And although we put it in a comedic format to say, well, this cleans, so you're basically saying that the darker skinned person is dirty, and now you've used a soap agent, and now you are white, which is pure and clean. Whiteness is not the symbol of purity, although people say it is.
Agreed.
And we've always tried to play this white hat, black hat, good versus evil. White is, clean and proper and, strength and, and darkness. Even, let's look at Star Wars, the dark side. What? What are you talking about? Black, you gotta be the dark side? Come on. Racism. I'm calling it out.
So Suja is saying, it made me think of an Orientalist soap ads as well as the human zoos that used to exist in the USA and Europe. These things have a deep-rooted history. European powers used to have colonial posters where they tried to sell soap by showing an African turning into a white European.
Wow.
So she even is bringing this into like a different continent.
I respect that. I respect that fully. I'm not saying if that's what they were trying to say that isn't racist. I'm just saying from a macro perspective, in terms of when they created the commercial, were they attempted to be, albeit inclusive actually, trying to include a white person, a black person, an Asian person when they made this commercial and just missed the mark? Is that what happened, or were they trying to say, no, you can go from black to Asian to white. That's how clean we can make you. I think that's what it's been turned into, but I think this is a misguided attempt at attempting to bring different cultures into the commercial, not necessarily exclude them. Because think about this, what are businesses trying to do? They're trying to make money, real talk. Like, that's what they're trying to do. Do they really want to disenfranchise a group of individuals who will go on social media and blast them for the next 6 months? No, they don't want to do that. Or until the next issue pops up? No, they don't want to do that. What they want to do is they want to make money. And they're not trying to exclude black people from that. Dove makes money off of black people as well. I think they were trying to make money off of black people, saying, look, our soap is good for your skin too.
Can I ask you a question? Are you saying that racism needs an intentionality behind it? So if it is not intentional, therefore it cannot be racist.
I'm 100% saying that. I'm saying that it cannot be racist if there's no intent. I'm not saying it can't be racially insensitive. I'm just saying it can't be racist.
So how are you defining racism?
Okay, that's a great question. I'm defining racism by the intent, necessarily. And a person who is doing a certain action with the intent to exclude a certain population. Not necessarily an individual who does an action that makes a certain population feel bad, accidentally. I may call someone a Hispanic, and they might not want to be called a Hispanic, and I didn't know that. Am I a racist now? No. I may be racially ignorant, or I may have said something that's racially insensitive, but it doesn't make me a racist.
I think racial ignorance is a precursor to racism. The fact that you have not been educated on different ethnicities or different racial identities is part of the problem. It's much like saying, if I step on your brand new J's, your Jordans looking fresh.
They're not new, I just take care of them.
Well, they look real clean.
Hey.
Should you not be offended by
small,
it? Should I say, well, I didn't know those were J's. My bad. No, you stepped on my shoe, you smudged my J's, and now I'm offended. I have a right to be offended by something, whether I know those are J's or not, right?
Yeah.
So when we look at race in terms of a construct, we're looking at individuals and we're saying, okay, this commercial is racially insensitive. But it's rooted in the concept and premise of that racism. What needs to happen is these people who are selling these products, and I'm a big capitalist, we need to have more people in those executive boardrooms that can look at various issues racially and say, hey, listen, this might not be a good idea, Dove. We may not...
I agree.
We may not want to have this black person turn white.
Yes.
Hey, listen, Clorox. We may not want to have, and I don't know if Clorox did a commercial, but we may not want to have someone of a darker skin getting transformed to a lighter skin by the use of this product. I use black soap, to be honest, and I think black soap is real. African black soap, it cleans the best. Number one.
So you're saying soap that is from
soap Africa. That is from Africa. Black soap is actually very good soap.
Oh, cool. Throw a plug in. Where you buy that?
I mean, Whole Foods,
Okay.
Look at Amazon. But aside from that, Google it. Aside from that, what I'm saying is this, right? I don't think we should allow companies to get a pass saying, well, these people are selling products, they're not trying to exclude black people because that's a certain segment they're targeting. No, you need to do your due diligence and understand when you present these commercials, are these going to be offensive to people? Yes or no? And if they are, then don't do them. And don't do them for shock value either, because I think that's what H&M did with their particular situation. I think that's clearly
Disagree.
what they did.
So real quick, it's interesting that you said you're a big capitalist.
Super capitalist.
Here we go.
and the reason I think I find that in a way kind of ironic. So when we think of racism, and people define it in different ways, racism is the type of word that people tend to get stuck on, because everyone has a different definition for it. When we look at the root of racism, where it started, how it became this social construct, There's a really good book. Eric Williams talks about. He was the first prime minister of Trinidad. He talks about capitalism and slavery. James Baldwin talks about this, about how initially it wasn't a racial thing. Race didn't exist. He said the reason black people were brought to this part of the world was for economics. They were the cheapest labor that could be found. The way you legitimize slavery and the dehumanization of people is by now constructing a thing called race. But initially, at its core, it was the beginning of capitalism.
Okay.
Right? So race and racism is inherently tied to capitalism. So it's interesting how we talk about, and we're all complicit in capitalism. Like, I love Amazon. Like, I live in the United States. I have an iPhone. Like, we're all complicit in it. I'm just saying, like, when we talk about historical roots of things, I think it's also important to kind of think about where racism and race, like, where it came from and how it's developed.
I 100% agree with you in terms of the fact that what we consider slavery, which is basically taking one section of a population and using them for your financial benefit with regards to not paying them a cent, multiplying them, dehumanizing them over generations and making profit from them. I 100% agree that that's the true reason slavery came about.
And race, yeah.
And race, yes. But what I disagree with is the fact that it should be obviously allowed in terms of just saying, well, these people are making money. They're capitalists. In the true form of capitalism, it should be allowed. No, it should not be allowed because that capitalism dehumanizes a certain segment, which I happen to be a part of. So I have a problem with that.
So there's a line, basically.
There is a line in terms of, let's take, for instance, Apple. You have Apple stuff in here. I mean, is Apple benefiting from cheap labor in other countries? Of course they are.
Is that wrong?
Do they make these phones for $2-3 and sell them for $1,000? It's not wrong unless it is dehumanizing to a certain segment of a population where you are infringing upon their ability as a person to, number one, grow, educate themselves, read, understand their religion, strip their culture, strip their language, which is what happened in slavery. So there's a distinction between capitalism in terms of someone being employed at a lower wage versus someone being enslaved to create your product, and you're not paying them for them, and you're not paying them for generations, and you're gonna breed them, and you're gonna use their family for generations to build your wealth. There's something wrong with that. Absolutely.
What do you think?
In terms of capitalism, one of the few things that, not few things, one of the things I actually do agree with that. I don't have any issue with cheap labor. I don't have an issue with a company like, and we can go there. We can 100% go there. We can definitely go there. I don't have a problem with, and by cheap labor, this is what I mean. I don't feel like anyone should be in a sweatshop per se, right? But I do feel as though I don't feel like there's an issue with a company in America utilizing the fact that their dollar is stronger in a foreign land to grow their business. I don't have a problem with that. Do I agree with poverty?
Yeah, because in a way you're kind of saying that.
I need you to explain that further.
So, like, you don't have a problem with cheap labor. So poor people who work at McDonald's, Walmart, your retail places, systematic poverty. People cannot get out of this because they're born into this. It's kind of hereditary, and that's all the money they'll ever make. Minimum wage for some people.
Okay.
And that's cheap labor.
Okay, cheap. So here is. I'll answer that question with a question. Are you asking me, do I feel as though an individual at McDonald's should be making the same amount as an individual at Geico? Or an individual at, who is a doctor or a lawyer? Should everyone be paid the same? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah.
The answer is no to that.
I don't know. I was just, you said that you agree with cheap labor.
Cheap labor for cheap labor, what I mean is that I don't have an issue with an individual who is utilizing the strength of the U.S. dollar. I don't have an issue with an individual who is able to use that for their benefit, because in reality, if you travel, and I travel, I'm sure a lot of people travel here.
We travel together.
We travel together.
Totally agree with Sean.
Yeah. So we travel together. So and I'm sure some of your followers travel as well. And what you'll learn when you travel to certain countries is that your dollar goes much further, right? So because your dollar is going much further, if you were to, for example, pay that person in this country the U.S. minimum wage, they would live like kings. Like that. Like I don't. That's not what their rate is over there. So the fact that you're using you can't use your U.S. and mindset in terms of what a number or what someone should be paid over there. That's just not. That's not okay. Like that's not what's going to happen. So we throw dollars around here like it's nothing. But if you would do that overseas in some areas, it'd be ridiculous. It'd be like throwing 20s, which doesn't make sense.
See, I disagree. But go ahead. Go ahead.
I know you disagree, but I would firmly agree with Sean on this particular point, in the fact that strength of dollar has its place in the marketplace. We are globalized now. It's a global market, and with that comes the one thing that the U.S. makes is the dollar. We don't manufacture things in this country. We don't produce TVs. We don't produce level of sophistication of automobiles. When we think of automobiles, we think of Germany and Japan. Mm-hmm. We don't think of GM or these old days of Ford. So the one thing that the U.S. has going for it, which we'll always have, is the U.S. dollar. And for us to be utilize that dollar in terms of our dollar strength versus another country, I think is important. And I think it's the right thing to do in terms of capitalist mindset.
Hold on.
When we talk about poverty, and let's just talk about that real fast, because you brought up poverty.
Of course.
And I'm gonna.
He brought it up.
Well, I'm gonna talk about. Ben Carson said.
Oh Lord.
Yeah.
No.
I've never heard anyone start a sentence like that.
Carson.
Ben
No.
Carson said.
My man
I'll
BC
hope
said.
it was.
My man BC said.
He said that.
He said poverty was a mindset, and I think a lot of people took that and ran with it. Was like, well, totally wrong. But to a certain extent, it is somewhat factual. Poverty is a mindset. You have a wealth mindset and a poverty mindset. When I started working a zillion years ago, I made $3.25 an hour. Did I think in my mind that I am going to make minimum wage $3.25 for the rest of my life? No. And the reason being is because my mindset was, this is a beginning stage.
We also have to account for inflation.
Of course, we account for inflation. We account for standard of living, cost increase, various other things.
Here's the question, and it might be a personal question. You said when you first started working, you were making 3-something, 15. Now maybe early 90s, late 90s.
You gotta go into the dates.
I think what you're saying is...
Something of a heart.
I think going to the dates, son.
I think what you're saying is a logic that many conservatives and Republicans use to disprove the reality of systemic poverty. And what you're saying is that this is... I mean, you quoted...
Right.
I mean... the only black guy on Trump's
BC,
payroll,
son.
right? Like, BC.
And I'm not a BC supporter. Let's just start with that. I'm not a BC supporter, but what I'm saying is there are several books on this. Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. We talk about...
Who's Napoleon Hill?
Napoleon Hill?
I don't know who that is.
He's wrote one of the greatest books ever, Think and Grow Rich. It's the seminal book which all self-help books flow from.
He's a white man?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cisgendered, probably upper class.
It applies.
At least.
It applies. No, actually, he was actually. He wasn't upper class. He was a regular guy.
Guy.
Yeah, most people know.
Does he talk about systematic poverty?
He talks about. He interviewed several people who were wealthy at the time, and what he did was he made a link between why all these people have wealth, and that link was a certain mindset. And most of the books that are written today. When we talk about Tim Ferriss, we talk about Tony Robbins, we talk about T. Harv Eker. All these people utilize Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich philosophy in terms of you are what you think you are.
Please comment. I want to actually read some of these and see what people are actually saying.
You are what you think you are. If you think you're healthy, you're healthy. If you think you're going to be rich, not just say, it's not an affirmation, I'm going to be rich. You're not getting in front of a mirror and saying, I'm going to be rich, I'm going to be rich. Yeah. Your mindset has to be that of someone who thinks of prosperity and abundance versus lack and poverty. I don't think about being poor. Let me just tell you that right now.
Well, you're an attorney.
Well, it means nothing. It means nothing. I know a lot of poor attorneys. It actually means nothing.
I think the word poor is kind of like the word racism. That people have different definitions of this. When I think of poverty, I'm not thinking of a college student or most college students who live in a dorm. I'm thinking about a person who is, because most poor people work multiple jobs to try to afford to live.
She called you Bernie Madoff.
Right. I'm sure Natasha's saying I'm sure Bernie Madoff had a similar mindset.
Bernie Madoff.
Madoff. I don't know who that is. Who is it?
Bernie Madoff,
I don't know
biggest Ponzi schemer in U.S. history.
Man, English is my second
I
language,
hear you,
so
man.
I'm sorry. I barely pronounce Bernie. Natasha's a doctoral student at Georgia State. Super
Shout out
smart,
to Natasha.
brilliant. Yeah, but yeah, I think if you believe it, do you believe in institutional racism?
Absolutely.
So I think if we believe in that, I think we also need to believe in patriarchy and institutional poverty. I think we need to believe in those things too. And by not believing in those things, because that's kind of what I'm hearing, because all it takes is a mindset. No, like poverty is literally inherited.
All right.
Most wealthy people and most poor people will most likely give birth to children who will stay poor the rest of their lives, or give birth to wealthy children that will stay wealthy for the rest of their lives. That's we can look at that empirically.
I don't know about that.
We can look at that empirically. There's enough research out there. I can give you a bunch of books. This has been proven over and over and over again. And when I'm talking about poverty, I'm not talking. And remember, I'm not saying that they're getting wealthy.
Are you talking about, for instance, functional poverty? For instance, people who live check to check, people who they are flush with money on the 1st and maybe the 15th, and by the 30th they're literally broke, because you have a lot of that in society. You have people who make $100,000, yet they have $10 in their bank account.
Sure.
This happens, and they are functionally poor because they spend more than their means. I'm gonna give you a prime example.
I don't know about. Can I read these comments real quick?
Sure, bro.
Yeah, please.
Please.
So just saying, but wouldn't you have to be an idea person for that to happen? You either have to have the drive to climb the ladder or the creativity to innovate. Not everyone has that. Institutional poverty is designed to keep people at the bottom. I agree with Herson. Thank you. Natasha's saying social mobility. And Natasha, could you please elaborate on that a little bit? And Suja is also, she's a PhD student at Oxford University. So yeah, so we have some smart people on today. All the time.
Today.
I'm a horrible person. All right, but yeah, so I don't know. What do you? We're kind of getting away from tonight's topic, but this is a good conversation. What do y'all think about this? Institutional poverty. I think to believe in institutional racism and not institutional poverty,
it goes hand in hand.
Says something about the way we think about race and poverty.
I think it goes hand in hand, but I think your mindset in terms of your viewpoint on poverty, you can overcome those things. When we talk about, and I'm not going to mention BC again, but when we talk about
man, BC.
How do you open up an argument?
When we talk about BC,
God.
he grew up in an impoverished situation. Obviously, he went on to become a neurosurgeon. And the reason being is because of his mindset. You can change your circumstance in America, not in some other countries, but in America, you can change your circumstances based on your mindset.
Okay,
I will say
this is the land of freedom. You can go to school.
I'm gonna take your logic, but go ahead.
Only one problem I do have with this line of arguments that we have is that it seems as though we're saying that there's nothing this individual can do. You're always gonna be broke. And I don't like that argument, and I think that is a defeatist argument. Yeah. I feel like it's not uplifting. I don't feel like it's even realistic, to be honest with you, because the situation that we have in America, I'm not saying that everyone's going to be able to live the American dream and just be a millionaire. Everyone's not going to be a millionaire, because if everyone was a millionaire, then the goal wouldn't be a million, it would be $1 billion. Exactly. Like, there's always going to be levels. Like, it's never going to be a time in which a person who is a neurosurgeon is going to make the same as someone at McDonald's. It's not going to happen, because of supply and demand and everything else, and the need for these things. So no one's ever going to say that everyone's going to make the same and everyone's going to do that. But I do believe that there are different ways in which individuals are able to grow and to learn and to move and to be mobile in their situation. I didn't grow up from a situation in which was great, but I was able to get out of that situation and do better. And I think a lot of individuals had the same drive. They were able to do that as well. I don't think that everyone necessarily is going to do exactly what I did or do it my way, and they probably do it better. But I don't think that you can say this individual went from a bad place. You're never going to go anywhere. I don't understand how that's even a. I would love for you to better explain what you're saying with that.
Yeah. Natasha's saying if someone is born impoverished, it is highly unlikely that they will move from the working poor to the middle class or wealthy. These are how they've been socialized to navigate through the world.
I agree. Okay.
And not just that, but for other reasons in addition to that too. So yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Can you read that one more time?
Sure. If someone is born impoverished, it is highly unlikely that they will move from the working poor to the middle class or wealthy due to how they've been socialized to navigate through the world. Susan's saying, except through education or good old-fashioned hustle, you got to push the odds. I would also disagree with that though. Education, higher education especially, reinforces class structures. So you go to a higher education institution and you graduate, right? Well, now you're reproducing a type of class structure. I went to college, you didn't. I'm going to get this job, and you won't.
Likely.
And not just that, we have prestigious universities. So your Harvard compared to FIU, where I go, a Hispanic serving institution. There's a difference. And class is related and embedded in all these things. Poor people, most likely, will never be wealthy. Never.
It's harder for a poor person to be wealthy.
Most likely, most of the times, I'm not saying every poor person, I'm not saying that. I'm saying most of the time. But and it's kind of like your argument. So Obama became president of the United States.
Yeah.
Does that mean that racism doesn't exist?
Not at all.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Systemic racism doesn't exist? Of course it exists.
Absolutely.
But Obama became president. And that kind of gets to your point that, well, a poor person can do this, so systematic poverty doesn't necessarily
exist. First of all,
exist.
let me clarify if we have any misconceptions.
But please don't quote Ben Carson.
Oh, I'm going to quote Ben Carson.
Oh, damn.
Oh, my God.
Wednesday sponsored by Ben Carson.
I'll
Oh,
quote
my
Ben
God.
Carson.
Not Uncle Ben. Lord.
Dick Durbin. I'll quote whoever I want to quote.
Go ahead.
Here's the thing, right?
Lord.
Institutional racism it permeates our society. It is not going away anytime soon.
Just like poverty, patriarchy, sexism,
also sexism, being misogynistic, everything. But what I'm trying to articulate in terms of your individual nature is you have a part in this. So for instance, let's just start with this. I grew up in what it would be considered a lower income neighborhood. I grew up in North Miami. A lot of people consider this the hood, but people in the hood don't consider that the hood. But it is definitely hood adjacent, adjacent to Carroll City. So here's the thing.
Hood adjacent.
Definitely hood adjacent. Here's the thing. When we think about people in this particular segment of the population, we think of poverty. We think of uneducated. We think of desperation. Your mentality drives you from that. You know, I was like every other kid. I wanted some Jordans. I wanted, fresh outfit. I wanted all that. Yeah. If I could go back in time, I would have bought Nike stock. I would have bought, things that would be assets instead of liabilities. I spent my time spending money on a lot of liabilities. And this is part of a wealthy mindset versus an impoverished mindset. I know people who bought a car before they bought a house, right? Mm-hmm. I know people who they would get a settlement and they would go buy a Jordan collection. What are you doing? This is a low class mentality, right?
No, that's a nice way of saying.
I mean, it is.
You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? Like, a Jordan collection is not an asset. Those are all liabilities. Although they look cool, those things do not translate into money in the future. And when you think about black people or minorities in general, I think we need to talk about money in our family. We need to talk about racism in our family. We need to talk about all these things that kind of bring us together, but also separate us from the majority.
I think that goes to what. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think that goes to what. Is that Tasha? I think that's what she was kind of getting at.
Yeah, Natasha. Yeah.
I think that's one of the issues in turn. I think that kind of goes along with this argument because individuals are likely to be poor. You said more likely to be poor if they're born poor. And I agree with you, but maybe for a different reason, or maybe for the same reason. But I think the reasoning is the way we're growing up and the way we were taught. It's kind of like Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Absolutely.
I don't know if anyone read that book. I think it's a good book to read.
Robert Kiyosaki.
But
Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
I'll post it tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a really good book.
By the way, that stems from Napoleon Hill. Rich Dad is an offshoot of Napoleon Hill, but a great book.
It's also a great book. I like books, so that's one thing that we can talk about. But in terms of that book, it looks at how an individual is taught. It's taught about money. It's taught about growth. It's taught about how you can better yourself, and be it through education or through working. Or someone might say, okay, in order to be rich, you need to in order to make money, you need to go out and go get a job right now. You're 17. You're a grown man. Go ahead and go to Target and get yourself a job. Where another individual in a different class might say, okay, you need to get your SATs ready because we need to make sure that you have high SAT scores so you can get into Harvard. So when you go to Harvard, you can graduate and you can go to this business school. And they're just setting themselves up for different trajectories. And it's not that one individual or one race or one class or group of people are going to be able to do better than the others. It's just the routes that they have to take based on the situation that they're in.
I think the very idea of thinking about Harvard as a place that someone can go to is in itself a type of privilege and class mentality.
I don't understand that.
I think a poor person who was born in the United States, I'm speaking in a very general way,
Sure.
could never imagine, might not even know what Harvard even is.
What are you talking about? That's totally erroneous.
No, I and I think it depends how we're defining poverty. Which to me, poverty is it. Think about this. Like you go to you said, thinking about Jordans and stuff. I don't know about you, but me, I think a lot of us grew up poor. At age 5, I had no idea what Harvard was. At 10, I didn't know what Harvard was. At 15, maybe I had heard of a place called Harvard. Maybe. Like I just. And I think a lot of poor people, I think also kind of, and that isn't even a place that we're thinking about. That isn't even a reality for a lot of people. So why should we be thinking of that? Like, a reality might be, at my best, maybe a community college, maybe a local university, at my best. As a first generation person, unless my parents went to college, unless they maybe both, again, my parents didn't really speak English. So
I'm gonna chime in on this.
Wait, there's some comments I think you may want.
My bad.
Suja's saying, okay, Natasha's saying, there was a conversation going around about minorities, and Suja said, people who came here with very little who are now millionaires, lots of them are Mediterranean or South Asian immigrants. Suja said, Hamdi Ulukaya, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, the Chobani Greek yogurt guy, for instance. Natasha's saying, Asians are considered the model minority, so they are the most likely to be given better opportunities than other groups. And I would caution that too, like, which Asians? Because some Asians are from Pakistan, India, who would be considered
We know
terrorists.
what she means.
We definitely.
I know, but I'm also getting at that.
I'm gonna call racism on that.
Suja's saying, good point, Tasha. It's not black and white. Yes, an intellectual. Yeah. So these are some of the comments going around.
Oh, okay.
I do want to get to the topic of H&M though. So go ahead.
Okay, I know we are very off topic. But she did touch on the model minority, and they're given better opportunities because they are Asian. I want to touch on that in terms of a real life situation. Not just a hypothetical. I work in the admissions office at the University of Miami. Real talk. Let's do real talk. This is real talk. Here's how.
Big Asian population, right, Miami?
We do.
Yeah.
Big Asian population in Miami. We also have to realize that, and there's reasoning behind this as well, but there are different qualifications to get into schools based on your race. Like it or not, it's true. I'm telling you right now, like, we're not gonna argue with it. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to have this LSAT score, this GPA, or you're not getting in. And if you are Hispanic, you have to have this LSAT score, this GPA, or you're not getting in. If you are black, you have to have this LSAT score, this GPA, or you're not getting in. Like, people don't. That's true. And we can imagine who lies where. So it is a situation in which it's not like, okay, this person is Asian, we're going to let them in because Asians historically do better at this school. That's not necessarily the case. It's almost the opposite, to be honest with you. Asians do well because there's not a lot of them there. But what happens is they have a situation in which schools want an individual to help distribute the population. I think individuals do better when they're around more black people. I think this is a good transition because H&M wouldn't have happened as well if we had individuals who were black, perhaps in that room, who would have stopped and said, "Hey, this is racist." That is a situation in which, and you don't agree with that?
We don't know. We just don't know if that's true or not.
Okay, we don't know if it's true or not, but do you agree that an individual who was black in that room perhaps would have said something?
If I was in that room, I'd have been like, "Yo, what are you doing?"
Yes, but
Why
not
would you
every
put
black
this-
person is the same. We have people like Clarence Thomas, Ben Carson,
Hey.
right, who are literally supporting racist agendas. So I don't, unless we did the research and found out who was in that room at that particular time when that commercial was approved.
We don't know.
I think we can say that. But
So-
there is an assumption around certain races that we expect certain things from certain racial
Ben
categories.
Carson could have been
or
there,
racial
somebody
people.
said.
So let me ask you
Natasha
something.
said
So let me ask you
yes.
something.
Thank you, Natasha.
Let me
Thank you,
ask
Natasha.
something.
Yes.
Let me ask you something, man.
Yes, yo.
You really think
Show's over. Yo, Natasha she said Ben Carson could have been in that room.
Ben Carson could
I
have...
agree.
You really think Ben Carson is a
You
racist
thought-
in his mind? You really
I'm texting
think
Clarence
Ben Carson in his mind is like, "Yo, I don't like black people." Do you really think that? Do you really think Clarence Thomas in his mind is
Ben
like,
Carson. Or,
I'm
yeah.
going to do this because I don't like black people? Or do you think that
He almost cussed.
these people are more...
Because
I almost hit him with the, I'm going to keep it real clean. Do you really think these people have racist agendas? Let's just keep it real.
Let me so I just want to make sure that you're speaking about the Ben Carson who said
Shoot.
who said that black people, they came here as immigrants. I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same Ben Carson who literally dismissed, right, the transatlantic slave trade and equated that to just regular old immigration.
I'm not
And
saying he's
immigration
not.
itself
I'm
is
not saying.
problematic.
Once again,
I just want to make sure we're talking about the same person.
talking about the same person. Once again,
I just want to make sure.
I don't think these people are racist in the sense of racist against their own people.
Now we have nuances. Okay.
Absolutely, we have nuances.
Okay.
We have exceptions to all rules.
We've had nuances,
There's
but
rules
now
and
you
there's
want to address
exceptions.
it. Go ahead.
It's like you run through a red light camera. Well, the exception is there was an emergency car behind me, so I had to run through. There's always an exception to the rule.
I think
You're right. So here's the thing. Here's the thing, right? And I'm just gonna piggyback back to H&M. I agree with Sean wholeheartedly. Let's make a left turn.
And real quick, what did y'all think about H&M? Did y'all think
H&M's
that was a
wild
racist
racist.
commercial? Did you think it was a racist commercial?
People, please comment. H&M is wild racist.
Racist or not racist? Or,
Racist
or maybe racist, maybe not
slightly
racist.
I'm gonna call racism on it. My racist hand goes up.
So we're waiting for them. I think someone can be racially a black person. I think they can be ethnically a black person. That's how you can be racially.
Are you gonna do what I think you're gonna do?
But I don't know. But I think someone can also be politically black, but then racially white. And I think someone can be. I think someone can be racially black and then sometimes politically white. And by that I mean.
No, what are you talking about right now?
By that I mean.
Politically white?
Yes.
How do you define politically whiteness?
By that I
because
mean,
you're a Republican, you be politically white, and if you're a Democrat, you're
I didn't say that.
I didn't say that. What are you talking about right now, son?
Those are words that you said. I didn't say
because
that.
What you're doing is you're linking apparently.
I mean, what I am saying is supporting agendas.
This is wild. Sprinkle that salt. Salt Bay. He Salt Bay the whole thing. He sprinkled salt all over this topic.
What I am saying is that you can be racially a white person and support political movements, agendas, legislation, and policies.
Yes.
Right? That will ultimately help uplift
I agree with
the black community.
I agree with that.
So to me, that is a way of being politically black. Ben Carson, Clarence Thomas, I think they are racially, ethnically,
black.
From what I know, black. But politically, Clarence Thomas has supported legislation that has literally helped and perpetuate disenfranchised black people. So I think politically,
so is Bill Clinton,
I'm not talking about.
Have you seen the 13?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I agree with all that. I agree with all
incarceration?
that. I agree with that. But you asked me to explain my point about being racially something, politically something else.
So then Bill Clinton would be what? Would he be politically?
I think
black
he's racially
or
white.
politically
I think
white?
he's ethnically white. I think
I'm
he's
just
politically
asking.
white. I think he's
You think
everything.
he's politically white, ethnically white?
Sure. Even though he's a Sigma, yeah, I think he's white all around.
So him putting in a system in which mass incarceration exploded.
Yeah.
And a privatization of
politically
jails to incarcerate black people.
Yes.
and profit off of black
He's a
people.
politically white person.
It was a politically white person.
Yeah.
Yet people called him the first black president. How ridiculous is this?
Yeah, but I think that gets back. I agree with everything you're saying.
Right.
I agree with all that. I think it gets back at our. That's a loaded question too, but I completely agree with you.
The loaded dice.
So real quick, Karen's saying so sad. I just got to see this. What are we talking about? A bunch of things. Natasha's saying Clarence Thomas is Uncle Ruckus. Zabi saying I agree with you, Harrison. Natasha's saying let's say they support white supremacist ideals. He ain't no damn Sigma. Bill Clinton is a Sigma. He's an honorary member actually.
What?
So yeah, I mean.
Who supports white supremacist ideals?
Natasha said that.
Who's they?
She's saying I think she's disagreeing with me that I think people can be politically white.
Oh, got it.
So yeah. So yeah. So H&M.
Back to H&M.
So y'all thought when you first saw it, you didn't think it was a racist commercial necessarily.
I think I said that about was more of the Dove brand, but in terms of the H&M commercial generally as well. Here's what I thought. Here's what I thought. I thought it was very racially insensitive to put anyone
in it. What do you mean by that? So that to you does not mean racist?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, just want to.
It doesn't mean racist to me, and I think that there's a distinct difference to me between being. It's almost ignorant. It's the word is ignorant. I don't consider someone a racist because they're ignorant. It's just a nicer way for me of saying you're ignorant. It doesn't mean that you actually in your heart feel like your race is necessarily superior to mine or mine is inferior to yours, or that I want to do this because I don't respect you or your race or where you're from. That's not necessarily what that is. I think what it is that you have a situation in which an individual does not know, realize, or it just doesn't understand, or you don't understand that this could actually be racially insensitive. One of my best friends from law school, actually, right? We were at an aside. We were on the Bricks. In the Miami law school is called the Bricks. We were on the Bricks, and he was actually eating watermelon, right? And he was like, "Hey, Sean, you want some of this watermelon? I know you probably like watermelon. You want some of this watermelon?"
He's a white guy.
He is, and he's actually Venezuelan, right?
Okay.
He's Venezuelan. And I was like, "Bro, you serious? Like, it's like racist as hell. Like, what are you talking about?" He was completely like, what are you talking about? I'm asking you, do you want this fruit?
He was born in a different country?
He was born in a different country. Had no idea that offering me watermelon as a black male was something to say that he was racist. Like, what are you talking about? I'm offering you a fruit. So, is he racist because he's offering me a fruit? No. Is he maybe racially ignorant on that? Yes. Is that maybe racially insensitive? Also, yes. But is it racist? No, it's not racist. To me, that's not racist because he doesn't feel like, I feel like all black people like watermelon, so I'm going to offer you this watermelon. It was more of, I think you like fruit. Would you like this fruit? I want to share it with you. That's not racist to me. So I equate that to the H&M situation. Maybe that's because I look for the better in people. But I'll say an individual who says, okay, I'm going to put this child in this sweater. And from what I understand, when you do a model shoot, right, you don't just shoot in one outfit, right? You shoot a number of different outfits.
I'm not a model.
From what I understand,
you be modeling on the side.
I'll be trying to.
Okay.
You know. But you don't actually. They're not saying, okay, black child, we're gonna have you in this monkey hoodie. This is your hoodie. From what I understand, they put you in a number of different outfits, and then they choose one for the fold. And that's what happened. So I don't feel like they said, and something should have happened. There was a disconnect between the pictures that were taken and publishing the photos. That someone should have said, "Hey, someone's gonna think that's racist. You should take that out." Now, is the individual who put him in that hoodie, was he back there with a sinister grin, like, "Yeah, we're gonna put this child in a monkey hoodie. That's gonna be great." Do you really in your heart believe that? Or do you think that maybe there's a problem or a breakdown of the system in which from beginning to end, someone should have stepped in and said, "Hey, this is not right." Now, it's like my friend who had the watermelon. It's not that he was racist, but someone along the line, I feel like he should have learned that, hey, don't offer this grown black man a watermelon.
All right, I see your point.
I'm gonna read y'all's comments. We're gonna let D go ahead.
D Crooks about to give a counterpoint.
Not the third person. Okay.
I can't plug myself. Dwayne Crooks in the house. I can't plug myself. So I totally agree with Sean to a certain extent. Here's
Totally to a certain extent.
So you don't totally agree.
But to a certain extent. Here's the thing. I think when we talk about people's ignorance, where do we draw the line between their ignorance and racism? It is a fine line because ignorance, like I said earlier, is a precursor to racism. The fact that you don't understand a particular culture and that you utilize certain stereotypes or certain preconceived notions. I'm gonna give you an example. There is a basketball team in Ohio. I don't know if you guys heard about this.
Oh yeah, the high school.
That
they put jerseys. Yeah.
Black names or racial comments on the back of their jerseys, like Negro. That's racism. Like someone should be like, wait a minute, why is this 16-year-old kid have the word knee and grow? Or there was some other ones like
There were some worse ones.
they're all racist.
I want to say there was like a wetback one.
Wetback.
There was like
there's a whole bunch of. That's a prime example. If we could say, well, let me put my hands up. I didn't know that I'm racially insensitive. No, you're not racially insensitive. You are
racist.
Cross the line, racist.
There's
because as an adult, you should know that this is not allowed. It's not funny. It's not comical. It's racist. And I think the same thing kind of applies with H&M. I do, in fact, think that someone thought it'd be funny to put this black kid in this monkey outfit. I thought someone said, you know what? Coolest monkey in the jungle. Let's take this dark-skinned kid, put him in here. Ha ha ha, it's going to be funny. Isn't it going to be funny, guys? That's what I personally think, and I think that is racist. That's why I call racism on that.
It's interesting.
Real talk.
It's interesting how you even qualified it with dark-skinned kid. And we're gonna get we're gonna get into, and I want to read the comments real quick.
Please. I love comments.
Hydro saying, Giancarlo saying, ignorance and racism are connected. Natasha saying, H&M is the largest global fashion retailer though. How could they not know when it is not specific to America? Giancarlo saying, H&M's situation in a greater context has had documented incidents of racism before.
See?
Zabi saying, yeah, a lot of marketing teams are very unaware and insensitive. Natasha saying, right, like the marketing campaign in South Africa. If I remember correctly, they had only white models. Giancarlo saying, H&M hired a diversity leader.
Smart.
Just like after their stupidity was addressed. It's Nettie is saying, do you take into consideration that H&M is a European company and Monkey could have a different cultural context? There's a conversation going on behind me. In Europe than it does in America. Natasha saying, if that were true, but it isn't. Zabi saying those kids was testing things from the jump. Giancarlo saying no, because Europeans have referred to blacks as monkeys as well. Amber saying they should do research before you target a different market.
I would love to address some of those.
Yeah,
No?
No.
Okay.
No.
Sorry. She said pause.
I didn't mean it like that. I didn't mean it like that at all. I'm trying to take in everybody's comments. So this is one of the points. I'm listening to everybody, and we were kind of talking about this before the show started, how we think or how we conceptualize racism, right? Someone said something about that ads didn't only had white models. Historically speaking, most commercials in the United States have only had white people in them.
Yes.
The time that they did have black people or other people in them, either it was white people with their faces colored, and as we can see historically,
Yes.
or with the othered being the thug, the criminal,
Right.
or being othered in some type of way negatively, right? So this idea of calling a commercial racist is kind of a new phenomenon, even though most commercials historically in the United States have been straight up racist, sexist, classist, all these things, right? But I think, and we were talking about earlier, we tied it back to Donald Trump's language regarding Haiti and El Salvador being shitholes, that why does it take for racism to be explicitly in our faces in order for us to be offended? When most of these commercials and all these other things from different corporations are already in themselves offensive, but we don't tend to look at them in that particular way. It takes the explicit or the explicitity of something for us to be offended. Why does it take that? And that's something that I am curious about. And what do y'all think?
That's a product of society.
And what do y'all think?
It's a product of society. It's especially in this new generation of you know, I don't want to say millennials or whatever the next era.
This guy. I dropped the M word.
Yeah, I dropped the M word.
Millennials. Not the M word.
Millennials. You guys have to see it. You guys are instant. You want everything microwavable. You want everything, boom. Oh, it's right on my phone. Oh, call racism. Whereas you guys didn't really go through any real struggle of racism. You guys
Whoa!
That's what I'm gonna say. That's what I'm gonna say.
That's a very, I think, condescending and dangerous argument to make.
Is it though?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. And I think
Absolutely.
inconsiderate. I mean, I could add a bunch of adjectives.
Okay.
What do y'all think? What do y'all think about what he just?
That is about to go boom.
Let it go boom then. You know what I'm talking about?
He said let it go boom. Okay, go ahead.
Here's the thing. I mean, like, for instance.
I know that was gonna happen.
I mean,
go ahead. Go ahead.
So for instance, like, I'm watching Blackish last night, right?
Oh yeah, great show.
Great show.
Yeah.
And last year they had
an
episode which it was talking about the N-word, and his kids, they were like, "Oh, we all say the N-word," and then so I'm more compared to the dad. I'm in the dad's generation.
The dad or the granddad?
No, not the granddad. Son. I
didn't know.
I'm more like Dre. He's my generation.
Yeah.
And he's like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? You should not allow other people of other ethnicities to drop N-words. And then the kids, all their friends, white, black, Hispanic, whatever, they're all calling each other N-words, right? And this is what I'm talking about and it's not to disparage the millennials in terms of how you guys view racism, but your mentality on racism is a little bit skewed from my mentality on racism. Just like the granddad's version of the N-word is different. The granddad's version of the N-word is like, he doesn't want any rap songs, right? That would be Lawrence Fishburne's character.
Yeah.
And they use it in a different way.
You mean Samuel Jackson? Y'all saw that clip?
Which one?
It was like on, I think, CNN or something, and someone called him Lawrence Fishburne, and he was like, I'm Samuel Jackson.
Oh, nah, I didn't
see that. Oh, yeah, it's crazy.
So anyway, the grandfather has a different use of it. The father, Dre, has a different use of it. And then the kids have a different use of it. And this is what I mean when I say that millennials may not understand racism in terms of a particular type of racism. Because you guys freely have white people saying N-word in songs. You guys freely allow... Yeah, you guys. You guys freely allow other ethnicities to drop N-words right in front of you without checking them. Like, yo, when I was in law school, I had a friend of mine who was white.
Somebody give you a heart?
Yeah, throw that heart up, girl. When I was in law school, I had a particular friend of mine who was white, who was really down. He was more black than me. There was only 2 black guys in my law school class at University of Florida, by the way. This is a while back.
What year was that?
Don't worry about the year, son. Just know
So you went to UM and
I went to University of Miami undergrad, University of Florida law
It's
school.
very interesting.
There were 2 black guys in my law school of a class of 100. 2 black guys. So now you understand the dynamics.
Are you surprised by that?
Am I surprised by it?
Yeah.
I think there should have been more diversity. There are more black women. They stepped to this traditional 10%.
Black women and Latina women are outpacing us when it comes
It was like 8 black women,
really
2
are.
black men.
Totally
But my point is, it goes to Sean's point of who we have in schools and whatnot. But let's get back to what I was saying. So, you got to kind of understand that my generation is a little bit different than your generation.
Oh, I think we agree with that for sure.
And what you may put your hand up as racism or racially insensitive, I may put my hand up as straight up racist. Or my parents may put their hand up as super racist. We all have our definitions, but it's rooted in ignorance. It's rooted in complete ignorance towards another segment of population.
I think someone actually made a comment on.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I think
Go ahead.
someone actually, one of your followers actually made that point. I think he said something to the effect of ignorance is racism or something like that.
Oh, they're connected.
I agree but disagree. I think it's like it's like one of those LSAT problems that's like an apple is a fruit, but not all fruits are apples. And I kind of agree that ignorance is connected to racism, but just because you're ignorant doesn't mean you're a racist. And I fully agree with that, because what it is that just because you don't know about something doesn't actually mean that you're racist. I think racism is a different level that you need to sorry that my throat's scratchy, but that someone needs to be a certain level that you have to get to be considered a racist. I don't think you can just go out and just call anyone a racist. Like, and I'm going to always point back because it's an easy example. The watermelon example, is he a racist? No. And I think the answer is no. And I don't think that anyone would say that he's a racist, right? And I think it'd be hard for us to say that man, he offered you a watermelon, is racist. However, if it was a white man per se that has grown up in America, who knows that that's wrong to do, and thought it would be a funny joke in front of his white frat brothers to invite a black man to his frat house to rush just to offer him a watermelon. That whole situation now...
Which happens all the time.
Which does happen, I agree. That would be racist. And there's a difference between that individual and someone saying, hey, I didn't know offering you a fruit is racism. So ignorance isn't racism. Racism is a totally different construct that has a lot of things that you have to build on. You can't just say because you're ignorant, now you're a racist. It's just, you can't just, A is not equal to B. Like, you can't do that.
I think ultimately we all agree on like the ultimate, like the final point of this, like what is racism, what is not. But I think it's interesting how we get there. So you're saying that not ignorance isn't necessarily being a racist. You're saying that sometimes it can be, and it's a precursor to racism. Ignorance has led and continues to lead to the berating and dehumanization of people. So
yes, I agree with that.
And we tend to blame things on ignorance. Well, this person isn't ignorant.
Yes, I agree.
Ignorance, if you look it up in the dictionary, it means to not know something. Lack of knowledge.
Yes.
Right? We tend to conflate that with stupidity oftentimes.
Sure.
They're ignorant. Right? Sure. But I think racism was not created through ignorance. Racism, if anything, was created through an exact knowledge that was already known. So I know that by making this person and categorizing this person as less than human, then this will lead to that. We can create a world that is better for us, as in white, upper class, cisgender, heterosexual men. So this was not an ignorant thing.
That would be racist.
It was not an ignorant thing. Racism was a very intentional thing, just like sexism, just like all these other things. It was a very intentional, not ignorant thing. So I think for us to oftentimes blame things as they're just ignorant, I think is a superficial way of looking at it. I think it might be a combination of ignorance and also not giving a fuck about things. Because I can know about something, but also not give a damn about it.
Yes, I agree.
Right? So I think it's a combination of a lot of things.
It's a sliding scale.
Which we're going to address in the next segment. It's already 10 o'clock.
Oh, shoot. Dang, that's crazy.
Yeah. Went by so fast.
So we're going to get back and we're going to see the commercial and how it intersects and overlaps with the law. We're going to continue talking about this.
Stop making racist commercials, America.
You know what? Maybe
you know better. Stop making racist commercials.
But here's the problem
maybe
with that.
we should continue to make them so people can wake up a little more.
We're going to talk about it.
We're going to talk about it. We're going to come right back to it.